Hey, this is Jimmy with Open Source Solutions. Today, on this very first episode of Open Source Solutions, I'd like to talk about the state of browsers. Today, there are basically three main renderers. There are WebKit, Blink, and Gecko. WebKit is Apple's approach to rendering the internet, while Blink is the Google approach, and Gecko is the Mozilla approach. And that's basically what we're left with as far as options for browsing the internet today. There are others that are a lot less popular, but for the most part, these are the three main rendering options that we have today. So it's really important that these different options continue to be valuable to us as users. And more recently, Mozilla ended up updating their terms of service, which allowed them to start gathering a lot more information on how the users are using their browser. This made a lot of users uneasy, seeing as how Mozilla and Firefox as a product has been used more generously by the people that are privacy focused when it comes to using the internet. This has led a lot of people to look for other options. More recently, another open source fork of the Firefox browser became an option, and that is the Zen browser. So Zen browser is a really great option that provides more of a UI update for Firefox. There is mention of this being a little bit more of a private option. I'm not exactly sure what they use to do that. There's nothing mentioned in here that goes on to talk about how they've decided to make it a little bit more private. But here is another one of those options. It is LibreWolf. And LibreWolf does talk directly about some of the things that they do to make your browsing experience just a little bit more private. So when you look at their main website at librewolf.net, you'll see that under here, what is LibreWolf? Its primary goal is privacy. It is based on Firefox. When it comes to privacy, it's talking about features like no telemetry, private search, so using DuckDuckGo or CRX or Quant rather than using something like Google. uBlock Origin is already included, and so many people already use this. This is something that if for some reason you are not using it, this is actually something that is helpful for security, not just for ad blocking. There's a lot of different things that are being shared about your browsing habits through ad networks, and by blocking them with something like uBlock Origin, you're getting rid of a lot of unnecessary data leaks, and so that's a really important one. Enhanced privacy, it goes on to maximize privacy without sacrificing usability. And this is a really big one. It's one of those things where you're always trying to navigate a tightrope when it comes to privacy and usability. There's one main thing that you can do with any of these browsers that will make your privacy a lot better, and that is simply disabling JavaScript. Disabling JavaScript makes it to where a lot of things are not going to be possible that are possible with it running. And so today, what I thought we would do is do a quick test using the two primary non-Apple browsers. So we're going to do this with Google Chrome, with Mozilla Firefox, and then finally with LibreWolf. We're going to run a fingerprint test on coveryourtracks.eff.org. All of these links are going to be in the show notes. So if you're looking to follow along or you do this on your own browser that you're using today, you can find that in the description right now in the notes. But let's start by doing Google Chrome, and we are going to go to coveryourtracks.eff.org. This is actually running within a virtual machine, so it's a little bit slower than it would be if it was running bare metal. But what Cover Your Tracks is going to do is it's going to run a different set of tests against your browser to see how easy it is to identify this versus all the other browsers that have been tested recently. And then it will output the information about what it was able to gather. So is your browser blocking tracking ads? It says yes. Blocking invisible trackers? It says yes. Protecting you from fingerprinting. Your browser has a unique fingerprint, it says. And so when we go down here, if you're not familiar with what fingerprinting is, when JavaScript is running within your browser, you're able to understand a lot about the browser itself. This helps you develop applications for different browsers as you're doing them, whether it be like how to correctly get something to render on the page. You may need to know what the user agent is or what the browser screen size is at the time, what the time zone is to tell them what time something is going to be on. There's a lot of different information that comes from JavaScript itself. And so in this case, it was even able to gather that we're using a 1920 by 1080 display. And so this is using Google Chrome as it comes standard. Next, we're going to do Firefox. So let's go and open up Firefox, do the exact same thing. So we're just going to go directly to coveryourtracks.eff.org. This is, again, standard Firefox, the way that it was downloaded. And we're going to test this browser. All right, little speed up there. Our tests indicate that you have some protection against web tracking, but it has some gaps. So Firefox, by default, according to EFF, has less protection than Google Chrome by default, which is an interesting thing. I don't think that most people would realize that. But by default, it does have only partial protection here. And then again, using the JavaScript, it was able to gather quite a bit of interesting information about the system. And so, again, most of this is going to be something that you can gather on any website or web browser that is using JavaScript. But it does seem as if Firefox, by default, comes a little less prepared than Chrome, which I think that a lot of people might be surprised to find out. And finally, we're going to go into LibreWolf and run this exact same test. And finally, we get back. It says we have strong protection against web tracking, blocking tracking ads, yes, blocking invisible trackers, yes, protecting you from fingerprinting. Your browser has a unique fingerprint. So we still have a unique fingerprint, which means that of the 260,380 tested machines in the past 45 days, our browser fingerprint is completely unique. For somebody who is not, for instance, logged into a website, you could presumably track them just as well as you could as if they were logged into your website itself. And so from here, it was able to gather that it was using the Gecko web engine. And again, it was able to gather all of this information about the browser. And so there's some things here that have been obfuscated. So that's something that we can definitely put in the side of LibreWolf, that it is obfuscating a lot of this information and is purposely getting it incorrect. And so even though it thinks it was able to gather that information, it was incorrect information. And so that's another point on the side of LibreWolf. In the end, though, it was able to gather information. And so this information was something that was so unique, it says, that it was able to do it based on every other machine that had been tested on here. It was able to see this as a unique machine. And so that in and of itself is a problem. If we decide that we want to get rid of that, if we want to make sure that this is actually a secure, more private experience, is that we probably want to go ahead and install NoScript. NoScript is going to make it to where on a website by website basis, we can decide when we want JavaScript to be running at all. And so this link is also going to be within the show notes. And if you install NoScript and then go back to something like coveryourtracks.eff.org, we're going to let this run just like it was in all of the other three examples and test this browser now that it is no longer able to use JavaScript to gather information about the machine. Now that it's no longer able to use JavaScript at all, we get a yes across the board. We get yes on on tracking ads. We get tracking invisible trackers. We're blocking those. And then we're also protecting from fingerprinting. And then we go in here and we look at the kind of data that they were able to gather. Yes, they were able to see that it was a Firefox-based browser. And they were able to understand some of the headers that we were sending. But from there, nothing was gatherable simply because there was no JavaScript available for it to run. And so this is a really, really powerful way of ensuring that you really are getting as private of an experience as you can as you just simply browse the internet. And not to mention more private, but this is also a much more secure way to browse the internet. JavaScript is just a way of scripting and running things on your machine as you browse the internet. And so the privacy concerns becomes orders of magnitude more involved whenever you are able to run scripts within a machine. And so by blocking that and making sure that that doesn't happen unless you're on a website that you trust, you're in a much more secure situation. And so if you'd like to look into downloading LibreWolf, this is something that you can install on basically any machine. You can use Windows, Arch, by the way. You can use Debian-based machines and, of course, Mac machines. You can go here on librewolf.net/installation, install very easily. And then one thing that is really interesting about LibreWolf is that they do not accept donations. And so right here it says we do not want to deal with the administration required of properly handling donations. This is something that is amazing to see. They don't need the donations. They are basically just making a different version of Firefox. But it does point to the need that funding needs to happen somewhere. And so unless we want to make sure that Firefox is only being funded by people like Google and ad revenue partners, we should probably go ahead and send the donation to Firefox. So if you have the money available, please send a donation to Firefox. This is a really important thing as we start to look at our three main options. One of those three is still in our corner, or at least wants to be. And so we should donate on behalf of that endeavor. And with that, thanks for tuning in to this very first episode of Open Source Solutions. If you're into this type of content, please subscribe. There's a lot more coming. Thanks so much and have a great day.